Welcome to the AirCon Vault. Here you can find the recordings of the live streams from AirCon's audio conference. These are made free thanks to our sponsors: Sound Effects, Aftertouch Audio, Boom Library, Fmod, Game Audio Learning, Game Sound Con, Kilohertz, Revroom, Soundcut, Strata from Audio Kinetic, and AirCon, the online home for audio people. We hope you enjoy the video.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you are in the world. Hello. My name is Sam Hughes, and I will be interrogating and interviewing the wonderful Petri Alanko today about his music for Alan Wake 2 and beyond. For a little bit of a brief intro on ourselves, I am audio lead at Metacore Games, which is a mobile company here in Helsinki. I used to work at Remedy for about 4 years before I joined here. Petri and I met back when I did the podcast, The Sound Architects, we decided, just before I joined Remedy, but then we chatted quite a lot in the Remedy kitchen and all about all things really, Finnish language and how easy it is to learn and lots of other wonderful things. But, would you like to give a brief introduction to yourself?
Oh, yes. As long as I remember, I've had something like this as my, dream job. So it's really nice to finally be able to do something that you dreamt of as a little kid. The world has changed and everything has become quite a lot of easier, and at the same time slightly more difficult because there are so many gifted people around doing their best to sort of score another project or so. It's really hard to keep up with, everything that is happening all around. But luckily, I have plenty of time to sort of.
And plenty of talent.
Yeah, not sure about that, but at least I can manage myself.
Leads nicely into my first question, actually, which I'm sure people are curious about as well before we talk about Alan Wake.
Okay.
Just a rough kind of like guideline of how you got into writing music for games. Like you said, you've always dreamt of writing music since you were a little kid. So.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As I mentioned, it was sort of my dream back in the day, but I couldn't dream up anything about, not even remotely connected to games, because back in the day, the all gaming machines I had was like Sinclair Spectrum, 48K or Commodore 64. Those were my first computers, and what you got out of those was basically bleep, 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 and that's it. But it sort of planted a seed, and fast forward to, let's say, early 2000, Napster hit the music scene, music industry, and all of a sudden, all the budgets dived, and what was used to before the Napster, what was used to sort of carry you a single and the B-side was now supposed to carry you a whole album. So it was unsustainable business when you had to pay for studios, you had to pay for engineers, you had to pay for musicians and blah, 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 this and that. So I decided it's time to do some kind of a switch. So I went to talk to some advertisement agencies, and they were mostly full of a-holes. Unfortunately, they very, how would I say, unmusical people, as we all know how they can be. But then at some point, some people from several companies and offices, they decided to move on, and they started forming their own game companies and this and that and those and these. And eventually things led to a point where I got a friend who told me that, hey, by the way, the guys at Remedy, and I was also, hey, what about Remedy? The guys at Remedy wanted to know if he knew anyone who was able to compose modern orchestral music. I had my classical background, even did some conducting back in the day when I was like 15.
Nice.
Or something like that. But in reality, when that appeared on my topic list, I hadn't been doing any conducting for 20 years or so, long time anyhow. And then I thought that, okay, this is just, his way of sort of chatting me up to buy him a beer or something. But instead it wasn't, because the next week I got a call from Remedy, Mr. I think it was Petri Järvilehto of Remedy. Nowadays, I assume that we both know where the dude is, but he gave me a call and wanted to know whether I was available, and that was Saturday, I guess. And on Monday, I think I was already at the office looking at something.
Oh, and what year was this?
It was a sort of a demo scene. It was a scene from the game that, or actually a teaser of the game that they were making. And it was a cinematic that they were supposed to be showing to some people in the States. I guess it was E3 or GDC or something like that nearing. So, so they had prepared some material for that. And it was like showing off the environment and showing off how camera movement is and how the lighting is and how detailed the rendering is and this and that. And at the end of that movie or cinematic, the camera landed on the ground and there was a car and a dude who was standing out of the car, and that guy, later on, I got to know his name, was Alan Wake.
Amazing.
So I did some minute and a half worth of music for that, and very quickly, like fire burning under my ass. And they returned a few days later and told me that I had gotten the gig. And later on, I found out that there were two other guys sort of competing for that project. To this day, I don't know the personalities of whom they were, but I was told that they were some kind of, hotshots, European hotshots, I have to say. That much I knew.
Amazing. So that must have been, what, 2004?
Yeah, it was actually August 14th, 2004.
Oh, wow. And you've been working with Remedy ever since?
Yeah, more or less. Not as an employee, but as a, it's been quite a long gig.
Yeah.
I like long gigs, and I like, it's always very beneficial for both parties if you, sort of know what the other one means when he does this. Okay, nice. It doesn't mean it's nice. It's bullshit. You have to redo. So when you get to that level, it saves a lot of emails. It saves a lot of messages. It saves time. And when it saves time, it saves money.
Yeah.
The earlier you get your composer in, the less money you are going to spend.
100%. Yeah, definitely.
And
you were involved.
You know it here.
Yeah. And you were involved, like, even at the demo stage for this E3 or GDC, whichever one it was.
Yeah.
So it was a short cinematic, no gameplay.
No gameplay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gameplay came later on, and they used some of my assets for that as well. It went on and it went off pretty much the first 3 years or so. But then as the years turned to 2008, 2009, it sort of, I could feel the slight pressure appearing, but it never felt like working. It was more like, this is really fun. I like to chat with the guys. I like to be around when they sort of create this and that. They were just, magnificent people who were very open about everything.
And you were involved in the studio. You came into the studio quite often.
Every now and then. I lived in the nearby neighborhood, so it was a short drive there, and that's it. I'm almost their neighbor, more or less, whether I want it or not. But yeah, it's like 12 minutes away from the studio, right now.
Yeah, nice.
That's nothing.
No, it's easy. And I'm also a huge fan of the Alan Wake 1 soundtrack. You know this. I'm a big fan of Alan Wake 1.
Oh,
anyway.
Thanks.
And I'm curious, like, even in those early stages, when you just pitched this demo, was that the first time you worked on a game?
Yeah.
And from there, how much of that lived to become part of the Alan Wake soundtrack in the end?
That particular piece took at least 16 years. It appeared only in Alan Wake 2. That track I did.
The one you did for the demo.
Yeah. And it wasn't one, it wasn't just drag and drop. It had to be, of course, some you need to tweak it a little here and there. But almost like 100% as is went to Alan Wake 2. And that's the scene where Alan Wake is driving back to Bright Falls. You know, just before he's about to step through the static, he's got this, you know, monologue going on. He's driving a car, it's raining, it's night, and he's basically doing same kind of sacrificing himself. Sacrificial? No. Sacrifice. Yeah, thanks. Difficult word. Doing that almost in the same way he did in Alan Wake 1, where he jumped off the cliff and dived into Cauldron Lake and became captive. And I sort of recognized the same thematic and same dynamic there, and I decided, and the pacing was somewhat similar. So I decided that, okay, when I compared that flying scene and I compared his voiceover and that movements that the car does, where's my old demo? And I started retrieving backups from cloud, and you can imagine my amazement when I drag and dropped the original theme on top of that scene. It was almost like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah,
this is amazing.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I just had to tweak a tempo and, of course, lengthen a few lines here and there, but that's it. And of course, all the instruments had to be replaced, and you know, lots of things had happened in my workflow and my setup and templates, so it had to be severely updated. But I'm willing to say that it landed there almost 100%.
That's amazing. And that actually leads into one of the questions I was going to ask later, but we can touch it now, because it must have been incredible to come back. Because so Alan Wake 1 came out in 2010 and you started on it in 2004 with this piece. So you returned to it after 16 years, like you say, to then come back to work on the same IP. And Alan Wake 2 obviously had been speculated on for so long.
Oh yeah,
right?
It was.
People were like, will it be made? Will it, won't it? And how did it feel to come back to Alan after because you almost were in the dark place yourself for as long as he was.
Yeah,
and came back the same way he
I
did.
have to say it felt like a dark place, because I felt that there were so many things untied when the original part 1 ended. So that
as a fan, I agree. I was waiting for 2 for so long.
Yeah. and throughout these years there were many trials where we tried to reboot it, more or less, or not we, but they. Well, I'm talking like we, because I sort of belong there. Anywho, so I had composed quite a few things throughout all these years, but when the home run finally came, so to speak, I felt that everything I had done before didn't quite fit in with the new version of the IP. Or actually, it's not a new version. We have to treat that as if 13 years had gone. We have spent 13 years in the dark place, so things have changed. You couldn't do the exact same thing with Alan. It would feel like, what has happened?
Confusing.
Has nothing happened really? Instead, a lot had happened. But luckily, we had another protagonist in the game, Saga Anderson, with whom I was able to sort of induce and introduce the same things I did with Alan Wake 1, when Alan Wake was sort of an innocent bystander when all this mayhem and nightmares started to happen. So it was kind of handy.
And so much must have changed for you in terms of not only your process, but you as a person, and also all the gear you had. In that time span, how did your process for writing music, or your approach in general to writing music, change?
The process itself has always been the same, but nowadays there are less limitations when it comes to what the virtual instruments, for instance, can do, or how the demos are going to sound when I finish demoing something. By the way, I don't do demos. When I say demo, it means that it's a concept for the game I'm currently composing for. So it's more like it could be something like this, or actually these are the elements, but I'm not exactly sure about the balance or the exact timing or things like this. and even the leitmotifs are already probably there. I'd say 70-75% almost exist already there. I usually do the very first writing session right away. I'm getting a grasp of the concept, because it's very easy to write stuff from, you know, point zero when everything is new to you, when your head is spinning around everything. So it's a very emotional moment when you do that. And there's the good point in all this. I've said that many times before, that whenever you get stuck at some later point, if there is something that you get stuck with, you can sort of relieve the tension by listening to your early demos. They work like a time machine. They sort of bring you back to the moment where you had everything flowing freely inside you. It feels like you're suddenly standing on top of a hill and fresh air blowing against your face, and you can see miles away, oh, we're heading that direction. No problem whatsoever. We will be there sooner or later. And I do that occasionally, just to sort of remember that moment of excitement. Music has a very, very powerful force.
Yeah, 100%. And especially when it comes to memory. So you must have had a lot of nostalgia bouncing back and forth between the old stuff and the new stuff.
Yeah. So it's more like when the project takes like 3, 4, 5 years, you have to be about as careful with the project as you should be with, human relationship.
Yeah.
It needs some renewing. It needs some fresh air. It needs, something. Otherwise, it's going to end badly.
And you were saying that you kind of touched on Alan Wake 2 as an idea over time as well. So it wasn't like you were completely removed and then had to come back fresh and be like, okay, Alan Wake, what was Alan Wake? You kind of kept in the loop of what Alan Wake was the whole time.
Yeah, more or less. But there was always some percentage of everything that I had done for a possible reboot that sort of survived through all these trials. And it was mostly the fact that something evil is about to happen, and that evil cannot be described with words. So also it couldn't be described with, normal ways of music. You had to sort of invent something in order to perceive and to deliver the horror and to deliver the excitement is a wrong word, but anxiety maybe.
Yeah. And the anticipation.
Anticipation, that's good word,
And I'm curious how it evolved over time as well, because we had Alan Wake 1, but then in between we also had Alan Wake's American Nightmare, which was not too long after Alan Wake 1, was it? Was it like 2 years or?
Yes, something like that. And of course there was Alan Wake DLCs, but those were very tiny ones back in the day.
Signal, I think they were.
Yeah. But American Nightmare, that was a departure from the original themes.
It was a very different kind of game, right?
Yeah, it was. And we sort of tried to reinvent how Dark Place and Alan Wake and everything sounded like, which meant that quite a lot of the assets that I had done for Alan Wake 1, they were recorded on CDs, like recordable, portable, CDRs.
Yeah.
And then, because I wanted to have some kind of glitchiness in the music, because they were sort of splintered memories that Alan was sort of experiencing and experimenting with. I scratched the CDs so that they started glitching and stuttering and things like that. And then I removed all the tonal components from the stuttering and glitchiness with Isotope. Isotope RX had it was probably even a beta version that I had back in the day. So I removed all the tonality from it and used the remaining like things like that as impulse responses in Space Designer. I mean, convolution processor.
Yeah.
And then use the tonal parts themselves as sources for samples and sources for instruments and things like that. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I don't think I've heard of anyone who's like manually scratched CDs to then sample it.
It was idiotic, I have to say, because you could do the same with plugins so easily. You could do that back in the day, but they always had this kind of, that it wasn't random and it didn't feel organic the way how CDs sort of
skip
behave.
and,
And I was able to. I had a black Sony Discman into which I put the discs in, and I sort of banged the CD player with my right hand and kept recording everything that came out, because when it starts stuttering, it means that it doesn't go forward. So I had to bang it quite a lot. And after 5 or 6 hours, it broke down.
Of course.
Because why not?
That's amazing though. So like we went from Alan Wake 1, which was kind of more of a classical orchestral kind of score most of the time, and then American Nightmare, which was this kind of glitchy, and there's also the introduction of Mr. Scratch, right? The kind of like alternate persona of Alan, or like the darkness version of Alan, I guess, personified. And
Scratch was unpredictable, which is why we had to have this kind of stuff.
Oh my god. Mr. Scratch and you scratch CDs. There we go.
Well, no, not like that kind
of. But and then so we get to Alan Wake 2 after all this time, and the soundtrack, as you say, needs to evolve to include another protagonist now. So we have Saga Anderson, who's new to this whole world.
Yes.
But not only that, one of the questions I wanted to ask is that in between this, you and I worked on Control. And then Control was this new, weird, awesome kind of new IP from Remedy. However, then the Alan Wake DLC comes out for Control. And brings the two worlds together fully. Because it had been hinted at, you know, there's like documents and like the Remedy universe before, like Quantum Break mentioned Alan Wake gone missing and stuff. And then now we have this convergence of titles. And like in Alan Wake 2, there's also the FBC. So it all comes together. So I wanted to ask, when you had the work on Control that then linked into Alan Wake, but then became Alan Wake 2 with some Control elements in there, did Control have any impact on the soundtrack for Alan Wake 2?
Actually, it all began with American Nightmare when we started discussing about what it could mean if everything came together. It was a very brief discussion, and I think RCU, Remedy Connected Universe, wasn't mentioned then. It was more like a discussion of an idea how wouldn't it be wonderful if there was a world where all kinds of unnatural or whatever phenomena was like your everyday. There is this one portion of officials who know what's happening, and they are trying their best to try the news not spreading throughout the whole nation in order to keep things in their hands and so forth. But that was long time ago, and it didn't go like this. It was more like, you know, fantasizing about things. But with Control, everything seemed to start clicking, because Hughes, which was the original antagonist in Control, he was obviously, or it was obviously, so evil that it was able to corrupt everything without even touching. It just needed that there was something, just a small portion of his present in, you know, some space, and it started destroying and distorting everything even. And the idea of everything sort of getting mangled, or something being so evil that it gets distorted, it starts distorting even the physical phenomena or physical rules of physics, and from there began the thought of, hey, how about it's so evil that it basically has gravity, and the gravity is so concentrated that it sort of hinders the sound waves from moving normally. So it affects the pitch, and it affects the overtones, it affects the harmonies and everything. So eventually all that become also a source of material for Dark Place and the dark entity and everything that's, you know, Alan Wake related.
Yeah, because the darkness actually came into the Alan Wake DLC, didn't it? So we had the hiss in the main game, and then in the AWE DLC there was like darkness barriers instead of hiss barriers and things like that. So did that influence the way you scored that part of the game to kind of bring those Alan elements in?
Yeah, that was at that point it was already more or less intentional and according to a plan. And but I thought it was kind of painting myself into a corner,
Yeah.
but quite the opposite, because it felt like liberating everything, because after that everything is, everything is possible when you start doing things like that. And I like to think, this is just my speculation, but I like to think that maybe Earth and our dimension, or actually Alan's and Saga's and Jesse, whatnot, maybe even Dylan's universe is something that those bad guys want badly.
Yeah.
And they may not be allies, they may even be enemies with each other, but what's common for them is that they need that universe for some reason. So this is my imagination. I can hardly wait what is going on in Sam's head. I mean, Sam Lake's head at the moment. He only knows the truth, and this is just pure speculation and nothing more. But I can hardly wait what is going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very excited what comes next, I won't lie. And then, so coming to Alan Wake 2, then, where the worlds all collide and come together, you have Saga Anderson, you have Alan Wake, who returns. Finally, the return gets written. And then we also have the FBC coming into play. So you have like new, old, and familiar kind of all coming together. How did that influence this score? Because obviously when you did the first score, it was all fresh for you as well, and it was like you were with Alan on this new journey to Bright Falls, and what is this darkness, what is this lake house, everything. And now both of you are like, we know what the darkness is now, we're a part of the darkness. And then the FBC have come in to try and investigate it, and then you've got Saga Anderson here who's like, what is going on? So how did you approach the score for it must have been a much bigger mission? And the game's style changed as well, right? It became more survival horror than it did the kind of action-esque horror, I guess, in the first place.
Yeah, it was more like a psycho thriller.
Yeah,
very, very easily paced.
Yeah,
compared to this, mayhem right now. I've never sweated as much as I did when I played Alan Wake 2 for the first time.
It's a much scarier game than the first one.
It is. All the jump scares. I mean, the amount of dirty underwear. Oh my goodness. Let's not go into details.
But when you first kind of approached it, then what were you told about? Because you said that you touched on versions of potential Alan Wake 2s before now, but this one that they landed on, what did they come to you with and say, like, okay, this is the one?
It was one day. I usually sit in Remedy's cafe area, because sitting there in the sofa is a very confident way to save yourself from obnoxious amount of emails or Slack messages or whatnot. So I was kind of, feeling lazy there. I start my days very early, so whenever there's lunchtime, I usually take like a 2-hour break, just to cool my brain and learn to be a human again after spending the morning in the dark place, or in the oldest house or whatever that is. And then Sam Lake goes by, and he doesn't say a word. He just goes
and just winks at you.
Yeah. And he did it with such a confidence that I knew immediately that, okay, now
it's time.
It's green light now. And shortly afterwards, they made a presentation. I mean, Remedy's concept and IP presentation, what they do internally inside the company, they are spectacular. They are like, I've never seen or heard anything like that. They go into such an amount of detail with everything that it's all my hand hair is raising at the moment, because I'm that's just the amount of information for a composer is like, you're getting buckets of ice water poured down your neck, and you're sitting there and oh my goodness, like this the whole time.
And is that when inspiration hits already? Like, the excitement hit you and you're like, oh my God, I have so many ideas.
They show you concept pictures for the first time, and they talk you through the possible story events and the, characters and environments and everything. And you just sit there and music washes all over you through your brain. It feels like, you know, as if you're watching a movie with, you know, 5 Fs and then forward pictures coming
like
at you.
Clockwork Orange, where there's just
Yes,
like absorbing.
yeah, that scene. And if you happen to be equipped with synesthesia, like
I was about to touch on this. Yeah.
yes, so it's you basically are able to compose the whole shit right there, right in that very meeting, in that, you know, presentation, and you can hardly wait to sort of make it a puzzle in real world, piece by piece, cinematic by cinematic, event by event, slowly but surely. You have it all there, and then very shortly after that begins usually the pre-production phase, in my case, which means that I need to go through all my libraries and all my raw sounds and all my field recordings and everything that I happen to have in iPhone, for instance, and start building up something from that, something that sort of belongs there, or rings a bell in my head, or makes me think, okay, this is worthwhile, this needs to be edited, this needs to be processed, and so long story got short. It usually means that after that presentation, I'm probably the most creative for the next 2-3 weeks, like easily.
And if you don't mind, I wanted to ask a little bit about synesthesia itself, because I've rarely met people with synesthesia. I understand what the phenomenon is to a certain extent, but obviously you experience it on a daily basis.
Yeah,
and
it can be quite harsh.
I can imagine. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, I'm sure most people here do, but synesthesia is basically when you hear something with visuals, but you also see something with sound, right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, walking through Louvre, if you have, for instance, you had your earplugs on and you walk through Louvre, it's just, you know, it's a soundtrack. It's a constant collage of sounds and noises and music and everything. And the older I get, the more the senses sort of get mixed.
Really, they blend.
Yeah. For instance, nowadays it has started. I mean, in the first place, it was only like, you know, this chord sounds like steel blue. This chord sounds like, you know, brown. And then it started happening with picture. I look at the picture and it sort of brings melodies and stuff in my head. And
that's incredible.
Yeah, you can imagine how it's like being in a nightclub at
24/7.
Yeah. But if you go to the club in real life, it's almost as if I'm looking straight into a strobe light that's blinking,
like a kaleidoscope that's just going around with colors.
It's not great at all, which is why I never go anywhere. Unfortunately, it affects me like that. Or then I need to wear some kind of earplugs that sort of filter out everything.
But then if you wear earplugs, do you then hear things from what you're seeing?
Yeah, but less
than the other way around.
Yeah.
So the other way around affects you more. When you hear things, you see things. That's incredible. So when did you first realize that you had synesthesia?
I was 5 or 6.
That must have been insane to explain to adults.
Yeah, I went to school, first class, first week, and there was a, you know, harmony. There was an instrument in the classroom, and I pushed down F sharp major and told the teacher, teacher, this sounds like a steel blue to me. Well, now you know what sounds like steel blue to F sharp major. And the teacher doesn't say a word. Instead, she grabs me from my sleeve and takes me to the headmaster.
Oh, wow, straight
and away. She wants me to be transferred to some kind of special attention class. Luckily, the headmaster was thinking differently.
Yeah.
But it was like that for the first 2 years. And on the 3rd grade, I was able to leap over to music school, music class.
Yeah.
Or music-oriented school and class. But even there, I felt like I was probably the only one who's ever going to think about music as their main profession.
Really?
So I was always like an outsider in every place, more or less.
And do you think synesthesia influenced your love for music because you had this affinity with sound and vision?
Yes. Because nowadays, I don't know, it feels like more or less like it's an important form of a life force inside me. And sometimes it can be a burden, for instance, if there's noise or loud noises, or for instance, airplane, that's, you know, the constant noise in the background. Yeah, it's interesting, but it's manageable, and I've learned to sort of administer it
Yeah, I mean,
in quite a heavy ways. Yes,
like tools to manage it over the years.
So I can. It's no longer a burden as such, but you have to pay some very special attention in order to keep it in reasonable proportions.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like one of those double-edged swords, I guess. It's like a superpower, but comes with like the curse as well.
And when I mentioned that it's sort of spreading, a few years ago noticed that it's now affecting if I taste something new or something really delicious. It's
a color.
It's sight and sound at the same time.
Wow. Is that good, or like
it's interesting? Let's say it this way. I'm not. I wouldn't give it away because it's my most valuable tool when it comes to, you know, dealing with sounds and dealing with on-screen events and everything. Don't get me wrong. It's not a curse, nothing like that. It just needs some kind of. One needs to be really, really concentrated and careful with, you know, wherever you go.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is why I always have. Yeah, it looks like.
Yeah, that's why I have posted in the chat. And yeah, like Greg says, it sounds like a sensory overload.
Yeah, it can be like that. Yeah. It can be like that. Yeah. But when you've gotten that since, you know, the early age, you have managed to sort of contain it.
Yeah, it's not like, you know, getting radiation at
nothing like that. Nothing like that.
Inheriting this power. Yeah. But this leads me on to another question then, that obviously it heavily influences how you write when you see stuff from the game or you see visuals. So do you already have some sort of bias? You said you heard melodies before, right, when you see things. So do you already have like the score in your mind when you see scenes from the game, or like? Yeah.
Wow. And the funny thing is that even though I sometimes write pop songs as a hobby, I unfortunately see the whole effing music video right from the start.
Wow.
I'm writing an intro for some kind of a 4-on-the-4 song, and I'm looking at the bloody video in my head. And it stays like that until it's, you know, bounced off to a disc as a stereo file, and then I move on to the next one. And with game scores, it's for instance, with Alan Wake 2, I was constantly either in Northwest Pacific or in a dark place, or and it could be slightly heavy at times.
I bet.
Especially if you need to deal with the dark place for like a week straight. It starts getting under your skin, but I would say that it starts getting under your skin in a good way, because it becomes easier to write about, you know, bad stuff when you're in there
going
with
slightly mad.
Yeah. So you gain some, you lose some. It goes like that.
So do you have some sort of melody in mind, and then when you're, so obviously you work with the teams, and if they ask for changes, does it conflict with you in some way where you're like, no, but I've heard this, I see this?
There are a few occasions where I have fought with my face in blood almost. No, not really. But mostly it's I sort of relate to everything like that, like it's a sandbox more or less, and people put you into a sandbox and let you play around. So it's kind of, it feels very, very, I don't know, safe even.
That's good.
I don't sort of, there are people who are willing to burn down the office whenever they got an iteration call from the company, but I like it because it sort of gives me a different point of view, different perspective. So it's like food for your thought. It's just yet another tool to sort of perceive the scene. You can use what you had written, and then they offer you a new sort of angle to it, and you're able to sort of adjust your angle to theirs. And it's not a problem. It's just, you know, changing a viewpoint.
And I can imagine, like, for I also write music as a hobby and for fun, but I get mental blocks or I get stuck. Does something like synesthesia help with that, where maybe you're stuck on what to do next, but you see the visuals and it just throws melodies at you or throws some sort of idea at you?
It does that, and sometimes I don't know if people are using any kind of mental tools for writer's blocks or anything like that. You just maybe the easiest way to conquer a writer's block is just to invent 3 notes, like throw a coin or something and invent yourself 3 new notes and follow those. At first it sounds like it's bullshit because they are you're randomizing the melody basically, but it doesn't have to be like that. You can use that as an alternative way to perceive a theme. And there are many ways to conquer that, and there's no point of I know colleagues of mine who spend like 2-3 weeks in pain because I can't write anymore or something like that. It doesn't go like that. You have to have your tools. You have to have your sort of just like a mechanic. They quite rarely rely on hammer only. They have all kinds of
They have a full toolbox.
Yeah. You need to have those if you want to be able to build a house or fix your car or whatever. You can't do that with just one hammer. You need to have your set of tools, but you need to find them yourself. You can't go to a music store and, hey, I need a writer's block toolkit, something like that.
I like that analogy. It's a good one. We also have a question from Mark that I was checking out in the Q&A. So let's have a look. Because with your synesthesia, does what you initially hear in your head end up being the music you end up writing for a particular scene or narrative beat?
Yep, it does.
Or do you just use that as a starting point following up on that? Do you sometimes hear something very specific in your head that you spend a lot of time trying to recreate?
Funny thing is that if I hear something, I usually am prepared on a template level to things like that. So whatever happens in my head with the IP or seeing this or cinematic that or cue this that, I'm almost always playing around with the building blocks I already have in my composing template in Logic Pro, or I know that there is a sound on my hard disks that I can sort of drag and drop here and it brings me towards this. So that's one thing that I've learned throughout the years. I'm always Sam Lake says it magnificently in Alan Wake 2. It's not a loop, it's a spiral. So I'm basically using that kind of recursive spiral or recursive loop all the time. I'm trying to reach as far forward as I possibly can, but I'm doing this here, and I'm sort of.
So you're kind of looping but going deeper.
Yeah.
At the same time.
Yeah. So, but usually when something like that flashes into my mind, it's only a matter of sitting down and booting up the template and writing down things.
So you've touched on this now. I'm curious. You have a template ready to go.
Yeah.
In Logic Pro.
Yeah. Quite a few templates, I have to say.
So what kind of templates do you have?
There's a Northwestern Pacific template. And then there was, for instance, if we're talking about Alan Wake, and then there's Dark Place. And then there's the combination, because those two worlds, they sort of start to merge and leak. Yeah, overlap. And Overlap had its own template, but we sort of gave up that because we found another way to deal with overlaps. And then there was a so-called special thing, which was mostly using acoustic instruments only.
Yeah.
And they are not that large. I mean, nowadays you can do marvels and miracles with just, when I say 150 instruments, it's all already quite large, but it's nothing compared to the previous setup I had back in the day, which had like 3,300 or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And it lived on 5 Macs.
5.
Yeah, I had one main Mac which sort of gathered data from the 4 others, and that was stupid. But and the those formats, they were on all the time, and you can imagine what kind of an electric bill you get with having Intel machines ticking on in your garage or something like that. And it was stupid, and always used like a very small portion of everything. It was just stupidity, basically. It was stupid already then, and now even more.
So I just wanted to touch on this comment in the chat as well, because Mary has said, as a fellow synesthetic, I really appreciate hearing about others' experiences. So I just wanted to mention that because that's lovely. So we are getting towards the point soon where we will stop for questions.
Okay.
But the couple of things I wanted to touch on before we wrap up. One is, what is the, I mean, you called them stupid, I call them like inspirational, but what is the craziest thing you did for Alan Wake 2?
Well, compared to everything else I've done so far, nothing much as such. I, for instance, haven't burned any barns or
pianos.
Or pianos. No, not this time. They were control. But the stupidest thing was to record. I'm willing to say the stupidest thing was to record Apprehension Engine and try to turn that into a tuned instrument in Reactor or Contact.
Yeah. And for the benefit of the audience, the Apprehension Engine was this device that we got at Remedy that was just full of all these weird things attached to a box.
Yeah.
That you would make all these kind of horrific sounds with, and there was like metal parts, there was like really kind of like dissonant sounding elements, and like
it's noise box basically. Yeah. And there's only one guy who plays that brilliantly, Mark Corvin. I think he did Witch soundtrack.
Yes, yeah, that was it.
Yeah, and quite a lot of Apprehension Engine there.
Yeah.
So I try to tune this and tune that and have everything into an order. And whenever something was ticking or resonating or something, I tried to put that into a grid or whatever. That was stupid. But
did it work?
Sorry?
Did it work?
It did.
There you go then.
But lots of time went to that, and quite a lot of hard disk space as well. but
good job we get more of that as tech progresses, right?
But it's really nice to have, although it's not perfect, but it was really nice to have that sound set as a source for morphing. Synaptic morph, the plugin. Whatever you use as a sort of carrier wave, you're able to sort of poison it with that.
It's one of the coolest plugins I've ever used. Morphing is a really useful tool.
Yeah, it's like a mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And that eventually that sort of slowed down truck crash turned into a gold mine, more or less. And it's an essential weapon when it comes to dark place, in other ways, or of dealing with all kinds of RCU events, more or less.
And my last question I wanted to touch on is, because with the dark place especially, I think, right, this was the first time you collaborated with another composer. With Killian
Oser. He was a cool guy who came to help with everything related with Alan Wake 2 towards during the last year of Alan Wake. Everything was so frantic and hectic and everything. So Killian and Kocha and Dobry, they sort of came to rescue. They felt almost like superhumans with and it was so relieving that I felt like it was a godsend almost. I don't believe in any religious events or whatever. I'm a pagan since the dawn of the age when the dinosaurs roamed the face of Earth. But I feel like something miraculous happened when they arrived to the stage, and I could hope for nothing more that to be able to work with them again. And also, although it's me sitting here, I have to emphasize very, very strongly that there's a great deal of really magnificent and talented people behind the whole thing. And just the sheer number of people working on Alan Wake's audio and music, I mean, I could easily waste like minutes right now.
It's an army these days to make a game.
I mean, and also one thing that I had to point out, whenever you have an integrator, whenever you have a sound designer or whatever, it's very helpful if they have musical background, because if they are able to think in let's say some sort of musical theory,
Yeah.
this or that, whatnot, or follow something that you have just spoken in a side sentence, or briefly in a cafe area, without having to be without having to explain everything thoroughly for how handy it is to explain something musical
handy.
to
Yeah.
engineer.
Yes.
It doesn't work unless the engineer has sometimes played a violin or guitar or something.
Yes. But that's when it's like working with programmers. If you find a programmer who maybe isn't an audio programmer but has like musical knowledge or an interest in music or sound, then they already kind of elevate themselves as an audio programmer-ish.
Yeah.
Because they have an idea of the concept. Because like some of these things, it's like the other way around. Like having programming knowledge on my side is very, very basic.
Yeah.
But understanding how that logic works helps you communicate on that level.
Yeah. And also one thing that needs to be pointed out is that it's sort of having something like that, having someone with musical experience saves money, because it usually saves time.
Yeah,
it's important. It's very, very, very important to have that kind of thing
very
going
much so.
on.
Now we are closing towards the final bit, and I lied because I have one more thing I want to ask.
Oh,
so I fibbed. I just wanted to curiously ask what you're up to next. Well, that you can talk about. So very limited.
I think that was it. well, the only things that I'm able probably to talk about is that classical translation gets a sequel, and I'm continuing my so-called pop life. That sounds stupid. And then I'm continuing sonic identity cases, and then I'm dealing with several remedies cases or IPs or projects, but that's probably everything I can say about anything.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, you know how they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In general,
There's a guy with an axe waiting for me outside.
Outside, just like no NDA breaking.
Yeah. Under NDA. Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
Under NDA. Yeah. All right. I mean, I think that pretty much wraps up all the questions I have for you. We have time for questions and chats. There is a Q&A thing. Let me just double check, see if there's anything new in the Q&A. Oh, wow. Okay, right.
Holy.
So we have a few. Let's have a look. So the top one we have from Ian here is, can you describe your process of turning cutscene dialogue into drama?
I actually sort of passed this topic when I was in Prague Composer Summit, and I mentioned it there aloud. And it's easy. You just take the temporary voiceovers, or working voiceovers, so to speak, and you remove all the sibilants and KPTs, whatnot, plosives, and take everything, take them out in isotope RX, and then put the remaining through synaptic pitch map, and take that through Michael Norris Drone Maker, and put the buffer, put the buffer to 32768, like 32,000, and then if you need, you put that through another pitch map as well, where you're able to sort of, with the snapshots, do all kinds of different combinations of how the remaining frequencies are being tuned.
Right.
So you're able to just play a dialogue drone with selecting snapshots. And if everything else fails, just add as much reverb as you humanly can. That's my cure to everything. I just add reverb.
Just add reverb.
Yeah. I'm playing wrong notes with piano. Add reverb. That's it.
All right. What else have we got? So, okay. So this is an interesting one.
Yeah.
So we have here from Philip. There were some pretty clear nods to Twin Peaks in Alan Wake 1 and 2. Did you use Angelo Badalamenti's score as a touch point at all, or did you steer clear of it to avoid unoriginality?
I tried to steer clear. Usually, if you have something as memorable as Angelo Badalamenti, it's quite hard to, remain outside. But I tried as hard as humanly possible to sort of recycle anything or something like that. It was more like I wanted to introduce a feeling of something. Angelo Badalamenti's music is quite a lot about feeling and how he approaches a scene on screen. I mean, the movement and how characters sort of relate to each other. He's sharing the same views to interaction as David Lynch had.
Yeah.
So there's this kind of, it's very subjective, more or less. But I try to use that.
Okay.
In some cases, not all the time.
No, of course. Yeah.
I hope.
Okay, so we have another one here from Mary, who says, I saw your story on Instagram showing how many audio units your Logic scans. I wonder what your work machine specs are. Thank you.
The specs are, I called the retailer and told them that I need Mac with everything.
I need a Mac with everything.
Yeah, that's what I basically said. And I have a Mac Pro with everything as well. And I noticed shortly afterwards that it had way too few Thunderbird connections, so I had to buy yet another, card inside to extend the Thunderbolt thing.
Oh wow!
But the truth to be told, it's overkill, and you don't need that much. I have to say, it's like pointless.
Just to clarify, we have a question from Daniel, which is, there we go. How much RAM are we talking here?
With a larger template, easily 256 gigabytes
of RAM.
But I
mean, recover from that answer.
My tiny setup is consisting of Mac Studio, which has only like 160. It's well enough for everything.
Greg is, very calmly reacting to the answer as well. And I also need to touch on, because Lewis can't post these things without any response, that after this conference he's going to be Alan Sleep. So I had to do an honorable mention for that.
Oh God.
And also Greg says that your Mac with everything sounds like a McDonald's order. There we go. Yeah, I thought someone might touch on this, and of course it's Helly. Can you tell the burning piano story? I know this story.
I can, but I'm not sure if I should, to be honest, because there are two stories about pianos, but the one with burning piano was that I had a warm storage room where I kept all my live touring gear and this and that stuff that I don't need, and I decided to do a proper recording session with a piano frame I had bought from a recycling company. I removed all the wooden parts and left only the floor part, and the sound harp was standing there, and it was all dusty and filled with cobwebs and whatnot. And I had this idea that maybe it's time to do some kind of a library of everything, and I connected contact mics and this and that to the sound frame. And the burning piano thing, the idea began from the fact that if the strings are warming up, they sort of extend, so it affects the tuning as well. And when you hit the piano with, hard enough, you can hear when the strings are burning, that it's sort of, and when it's cooling down, it's gathering together again. And cool. Those create really nice impulse responses, I have to say. But at some point, I got slightly enthused about, burning things, and I spilled the liquid all over. And it wasn't gasoline; it was like isopropyl alcohol, like your average stuff you get from the apothecary. And it was all over the floor and all over the piano frame and all over my cargo pants and my sneakers. And when I light it up, shit, I kept burning for quite some while, and the dust kept burning. And that's when the sprinklers went off, or actually the fire alarm went off. Not the sprinkler. There was no water coming in, but everywhere. And I had a fire extinguisher next to me, so I decided to boot the extinguisher, and press down the handle, and lots of things, whatever it is inside, it came out and took out the fire, and it was me stepping there and putting out the fire from my sneakers, and it didn't go off, so it was all over the place. The powder from inside, oh sorry, the powder from inside the extinguisher, it just came out. It was all over. It was like a cocaine bear, basically, happening there. And then after all that, when it has puked itself empty, I realized that the janitor of that storage company was standing there in the doorway behind me. And imagine my, feelings.
Hi.
No, nothing like that. I almost burst into tears and told the guy, don't call the police. I'm moving away.
Yeah, I'll leave.
Yeah. And that's when I noticed that there were some adult tools next to me there on the floor, which I had used for exciting the strings.
Oh.
There was also a power tool and a hammer, or maybe two, and an axe, and quite a few things, pointing towards the ceiling. But yeah, that was it. And I took, as I promised, I took out all the gear, all over the powder. I was white as a ghost, and loaded everything into my car and drove to a next place. I made a agreement with a new company right away while driving, got the code to a lock, and started unloading the car. And when I had unloaded everything into the new storage room, the same bloody janitor was there as well. Yeah. And he never said a word. He just kept staring at me like,
I bet. I wish I could have been that janitor walking in at that moment and just seeing all of these tools everywhere, everything covered.
Yes, I mean, it was a huge one. It was like, I don't know how many liters was in, but
oh,
yeah, adult tools.
Oh, so there's Amelia Jones says, just wanted to say while we're here, it was an incredible honor to sing End of an Era at the end of the Lake House DLC. Listening to your experiences has been so amazing, Petri, and the talent and creativity of you, Sam, and everyone at Remedy is just mind-blowing and something I will always treasure being a part of.
Yeah, true.
Also, typing this was very difficult, not being distracted by this story.
Yeah, it has to be said that End of an Era was basically the last thing that was done for Alan Wake 2 as an IP, so to speak. So it was really emotional for everybody, and the way Millie sort of delivered the vocals, I become emotional. Quite a lot of grown-up adults have cried because of her singing. It's amazing. Amelia Jones, look it up in YouTube if you dare. I mean, it's worth your while. It's worth your time. Spend some time listening to everything, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Amazing. I'm still working my way through the Lake House DLC, I have to admit.
Okay.
So I don't think I've got to that track yet.
Okay.
But it is pretty cool. The DLC, the Lake House DLC, is very, very... It feels... I don't know. It feels different with it being the DLC to like...
Yeah.
Both, So it's pretty incredible. A lot of grown-up adults cry due to my singing too, says Liz. I think he means for very different reasons, though.
Yeah. Very different, yeah. Crying in a good way, let's put it this way.
Okay, so we only have a few minutes before we have to departure. So let's see. There is one more question left, which we can try and answer in a short manner. So what is your workflow when it comes to game scores? Do you follow the flow of gameplay, see the scene and start composing, or do you pick a random scene and start working? And that's from Tyrell.
Actually, I like starting with some random scene to anchor into something. That's much more usable than just, doing something. Especially, well, I like to start with some cinematic, for instance, sort of nail down one scene and use that as even though it probably isn't from the start or from the end of the game. It may be some meaningless cinematic, just some transitional cinematic from the middle. But when you have something like that as an anchor, it's much more safer to continue your work.
Yeah.
Sort of continue spreading your working from place A to place B and so forth.
And do you find it that kind of safety and security working with something linear before you work on the kind of more dynamic scores?
Yeah, and it's really easy to do wrong stuff with linear music if you start, inventing things. For instance, the pacing of the game can be very different depending on how early in with development you are. So it's easier to sort of play around with the concept and try to find something to anchor yourself in or to, or what's the correct way to put it? I don't know. And then using the early concept tracks you have composed for, that first 2-3 weeks time.
Yeah.
You have this kind of a very basic tool set, and then you start extending your tool set from there. Try to reach from, that cinematic towards the concepts, for instance. That's one thing that I always do. And at some point, you will know where this probably white boxed cinematic, cinematic without any textures or anything, maybe not even facial captures even, where that is from. So you have that arc covered with that one. And that's the smallest arc you can get basically from the start. But after that will appear more larger ones, more longer ones, and even the smaller ones. But you have to have that somewhere. Do we have time?
Yeah, I was just checking in. We have like about 5 minutes left.
Okay.
I think. So tops. Just in case anyone has any final questions or anything else they want to say in the chat before me and Petri remove ourselves from the microscope. For those who weren't here for that, there was a pun about Petri dishes under the microscope. So just a recap.
Yeah.
Let's see if we get any more questions before we round up. But while we're waiting for anything, I have to say this has been a very insightful and wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for your time and energy and insights.
Yeah.
Great to chat again as well.
I usually don't talk about personal things at all, but now it feels like you've basically seen my bookshelf and my floor and my kitchen and so forth when I've talked about synesthesia and things like that. But
I really appreciate you opening up about that as well.
Yeah,
by the way.
I know that there are quite a few people more or less either suffering or enjoying it. So
yeah,
it's kind of it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think it's been very greatly received by the audience as well. And I think, especially after what Mary said.
Alan Wake 2 truly was petrifying. Thank you.
Ah, there we go. Okay, I think we need to leave now. But yes, so unless there's any other questions or anything else in the chat, I think we can say a very big thank you. So first of all, thank you to Greg and Lewis for having us as part of AirCon. I love Air Wiggles and everything they do. Big shout out to my colleague Helly Lindness, who's in the chat, who helped put this together as well. Wonderful human who has also been a part of this process behind the scenes. And just wanted to say thank you to everyone for joining us. It was very, very enjoyable. I very much enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did and we did.
Yep. It didn't hurt at all. Nice.
No, not yet. No. But yes, so thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of AirCon, and hopefully we'll be back again next year or something. That'd be nice.
Who knows?
Who knows? Who knows indeed. But yes, take care everyone and enjoy the rest of the conference. Bye-bye.